People who married a sibling of an ex, how do you deal with having your ex as an in-law? Whenever people ask how my fiance and I met, we lie and say, the internet, because the real story could be the plot of a Jerry Springer episode. The truth is, we met because I was having repeated casual meetups with his twin brother, R, and R's girlfriend, whom I had met on a swap site. This turned into a really dramatic 6-month-long affair, with R cheating on his girlfriend with me, her finding out, and a whole lot of yelling, crying, and chaos. Early on, before all the affair drama unfolded, I ended up meeting R's brother D on a night when we were all just hanging out. We hit it off and became really close friends. As things got complicated, he was one of the few people who knew about what was going on between R and me, so we would talk, and he'd listen to all the drama. I was going through a really rough time in my life, and while things with R were very passionate and chaotic, I came to really value D's calmness, patience, and empathy. I genuinely fell in love with him as a person, completely separate from what was going on with R. While R and D are extremely similar in many ways, I jokingly refer to D as the good twin, because he is so thoughtful, insightful, and kind. After everything blew up with R and his girlfriend finding out and being rightfully furious, I ended up spending even more time with D. We fell in love, I moved in with him, and we've now been together for 6 years. He's incredibly chill about the whole situation, and we just laugh about how awkward it all was as a way of meeting each other. I genuinely feel bad for R's girlfriend, who is still with him, because it must be really uncomfortable to have the other woman at family gatherings forever. We've all moved past it, but it was definitely weird in group settings for a while. I'm sure she still assumes that I'm only with D because I couldn't have R, which isn't true at all. Story 2. I knew a guy from band in high school who had a crazy story. I never got to know him closely, but enough to ask every now and then how he and his girlfriend of the moment were doing. He started dating a girl who was a triplet. He cheated on her and got the second sister pregnant and ended up marrying the third. I honestly have no idea how their family functions could be any more awkward. Story 3. I'm currently dating the younger sister of an ex. The ex and I were really close friends for years. We actually met through another ex, and we tried dating for a while. It didn't work out because I couldn't stop seeing her as just a friend. Her younger sister had always had a crush on me and was pretty flirty, but I obviously ignored it because I really liked the whole family and didn't want to do anything to mess that up. After my ex and I broke up, about a month later, her sister went back to college, which is about an hour and a half away from me. We started texting, and she said she wanted me to visit. One thing led to another, and 6 months later, here we are. My ex doesn't really talk to me when I'm around the house during breaks or anything, but the rest of the family still really likes me, so that's a win, I guess. Maybe I'll update this post in a few years. Story 4. When my mom was 15, she told her sister, who was dating my dad at the time, they had a 3-year age difference, that she was going to marry him. My aunt laughed and said it was just a girl crush. A few years later, my aunt and dad broke up. My mom and dad ended up attending the same college and even had a few classes together. She knew who he was, while he only found her vaguely familiar. Eventually, they started dating and got married after 5 years together. My mom's family loved him. My aunt and mom are still very close, talk often, and have always joked about it. As an adult, I asked my aunt about it the last time I saw her, a few months ago. She said she had always known my mom was right after seeing how my parents interacted the first time following her breakup with my dad. My parents have been married since the 1970s and still act like teenagers. I think my aunt was the vessel that brought them together. Story 5. My aunt is married to my mom's ex. My mom isn't too awkward about it, but my dad kind of hates the guy, though honestly, he is kind of a jerk, so I'm not sure whether my dad hates him for that reason, or if he even knows the full history. For example, my parents are always tight on money, and when my dad offered to buy my aunt and uncle dinner, my uncle, who is also poor, ordered top-shelf liquor. Story 6. Only slightly relevant, but my great-great-great-great-grandmother had 3 husbands, and the second husband was the father of the third. After her second husband was murdered, she married his son, and they raised 10 children, 4 of whom were biological siblings of husband number 3. 5 were his, and 1 was from her first marriage. Edit to answer as many questions as possible. Cecilia married Charles, and they had one child before Charles drowned. Cecilia then married Richard, with whom she had four more children before he was murdered by natives during the colonization of my country, Enzia. Richard had one child from his first marriage, John. After Richard died, John married his stepmother, Cecilia, and they had 5 children together. In total, Cecilia had 10 children, 1 from her first husband, 4 from her second husband, John's half-siblings, and 5 from her third husband, John. I'm not sure about the age of her first husband, but her second husband was around 15 years older than Cecilia, and her third husband was 8 years younger. Cecilia was 27, and John was 19 when they married. I know all this because we're having a family reunion next month and are making a short documentary on our family history. Story 7. My wife has been my best friend since grade school, and for a brief period in high school, I dated her younger sister. We mutually broke up after a few months and remained close afterward. In college, my now wife and I decided to take our friendship to the next level. We were married a few years later and now have 2 kids. There's no awkwardness between any of us. The 3 of us frequently go out to dinner together, and everyone is lighthearted about the situation. My wife jokes about it all the time. We're also all on a bowling team together. Story 8. I worked with a guy whose wife cheated on him and ended up marrying the man she cheated with. Meanwhile, the cheated-on husband consoled the other man's wife, and they eventually got married too. The kids still have their original parents, just in a different rotation. People are weird. Story 9. Here I was casually reading some of these messed up comments when I realized the situation actually describes my own family. Well, my parents met when my mother was attending law school in the United States on a scholarship. My father, as far as I can tell, was making most of his income dealing drugs. I've always seen their marriage as one of convenience. She wanted a green card, and he wanted a lawyer. Some clean income didn't hurt either. Fast forward 10 years, they had 3 kids together but fought constantly. My mother essentially had 2 priorities, her children and her career. She made that work, but there wasn't much time left for the luxury lifestyle my father seemed to want. Since neither of my parents was around much, my mother's younger sister, who had rebelled against the family's expectation to study finance and instead pursued a career in music, would spend her summers in the U.S. taking care of me and my younger siblings. Things were going well for her, too. She had a mysterious lover who took her on lavish trips around the world and showered her with gifts. Spoiler alert, it was my dad. When I found out she filed for divorce and moved back to Europe. My father and my aunt ended up marrying and had 2 children together, who are now both my half-siblings and my cousins. My mother and father still hate each other passionately and only see one another in court, as their legal battle has been going on for over 20 years. Weirdly enough, I still think it turned out for the best. Both of my parents are much happier than they ever were when they were together. Story 10. There was a guy on Tifu a while back whose girlfriend and her twin sister swapped places. He ended up proposing to the wrong twin. His girlfriend basically dumped him for not being able to tell the difference. I mean, it's not like he was stressed out or had other things on his mind. Anyway, I always kind of hoped he ended up with the twin. Story 11. I have a story involving both of my wife's sisters, but I'll stick to one. This sister is my age and used to be my best friend. We came close to hooking up a few times, but I saw her more as a good friend. I dated many of her close friends and eventually her younger sister, whom I later married and had kids with. As soon as I started dating my wife, that friendship went downhill fast. She's usually salty toward both of us during brief encounters, but when we spend a few hours or more together, we have a great time, like the old days. Recently, my wife brought childhood books and notepads from her parents' house for our kids. I found several doodles with hearts containing the older sister's name and mine. I've messed around with many of the girls she hangs out with, and she's heard all the intimate details about it. I later found out she was once madly in love with me. She's also let it slip that she loves me when we've been drinking together. Now I have a house and kids with her younger sister, and I feel horrible about everything. Story 12. I was engaged to a guy for 4 years, but it ended because of his inability to keep his little wang in his britches whenever he left the house. His older brother briefly lived with us during a job transition, and we became pretty good friends. Shortly after leaving the manor, I caught up with the older brother over drinks. Cut to 3 years later, and we're married. They were never particularly close to begin with, so it didn't cause much trouble. However, the man-or recently started dating a woman who has a major issue with the situation. She doesn't want me at family gatherings and refuses to let my niece and nephew stay with us anymore. We still haven't figured out what her problem is, but we haven't lost any sleep over it. Story 13. This all happened before I was born, and I didn't find out until I was in my 30s. Try to follow along. I had an Aunt Jennifer who was married to Bob. Bob was a bit of a hound and apparently cheated on her quite a bit. Still, Bob and Jennifer decided to have a baby, and Michael was born. Bob then had an affair with Jennifer's sister, Anna. When Jennifer found out about Bob and Anna, she got the hell out and took Michael with her. Soon after, Jennifer started dating my Uncle Rich. Rich and Bob knew each other fairly well. Not close friends, but they ran in the same circles. Things went well for Rich and Jennifer, and within 2 years they moved in together and got married. Meanwhile, Bob and Anna were going strong and ended up moving in together and getting married around the same time. Anna and Jennifer eventually patched things up, and Jennifer forgave her. Over the years, things normalized and they functioned like a regular family, at least on the surface, with Michael's dad also being his uncle and his stepmom being his aunt. It was a very bizarre family dynamic, but it worked. Story 14. There were 2 sisters who, during their teen years, both adored a nice young man named Bill. They didn't get along to begin with, and this drove them even further apart. Bill married one of them and had kids with her. The other sister married someone else, moved abroad, and also had children. Sometime later, Bill and the other sister had an affair which led to Bill divorcing his wife. He then married the other sister, turning the first cousins into step-siblings. The 2 sisters continue to hate each other even more, and Bill's children from his first marriage now call their biological aunt Mom. Everyone seems happy and jolly, but I've only seen things from the perspective of the kids and the other sister. I'm sure the full picture would look different. Story 15. After my grandmother died, 15 years before I was born, my grandfather remarried for a few years before divorcing his second wife and marrying her sister. As a child, I only knew the second wife as Auntie Beryl. I didn't learn the full story until one day when my cousin asked, "Did you know Granddad used to be married to Auntie Beryl?" I called him a liar and ran inside to dob on him to the adults, which included Granddad, Auntie Beryl, and Grandma, the third wife, and was met with a very awkward response. By then, everyone was on friendly terms, but apparently the first few years after marriage number 3 weren't so chummy and involved some stalking and death threats. Story 16. I went on a few dates with a girl and we hooked up in my car. I later found out she had a boyfriend, so that was the end of that. A few weeks later, a friend introduced me to a girl he was dating. It turned out to be her sister. Small world. The friend eventually revealed himself to be a big a-hole, and the sister and I started dating instead. It was kind of weird at first, but she's amazing. When I met her friends, I found out that she and her sister were part of the same friend group, which made things awkward. We dated for a couple of years, and I started attending family events regularly. Over time, her sister became more comfortable around me and started seeing me as a brother. Still, weird. She'd wear comfortable house clothes when I was around because at that point, I was family. I'd occasionally see things I probably shouldn't have anymore. My girlfriend didn't seem to mind. She was clearly past it. 8 years later, we're getting married next week. Her sister has been incredibly helpful with the wedding planning, and I really appreciate everything she's done for us. Still weird. Story 17. My family has a great, confusing, messed up example of this. My mom is the youngest of 5 with 4 older brothers. My oldest uncle Ken dated a woman named Vicky. They broke up, and then my second oldest uncle Jim started dating Vicky. Awkward. But Uncle Ken got over it by dating Vicky's younger sister, Linda, so now Uncle Ken is married to Linda, his ex-girlfriend's sister, and Uncle Jim is married to Vicky, Ken's ex, and Linda's sister. It's ridiculous. No one cares, though. It was like 45 years ago, but it's still pretty. Funny that my brother uncles are married to my sister aunts, one of whom dated both of my uncles. Story 18. This isn't terribly interesting, but since there aren't many other examples, I went on a couple of dates with a guy who turned out to be enough of a jerk that I didn't want to see him anymore. We shared the same friend group, though, so we saw each other often enough. I'm now married to his younger brother, who is also my best friend. The two brothers don't get along. We talked everything through once and agreed not to bring it up again unless circumstances change. He's understanding and glad that I met him through his brother, but he'd prefer not to dwell on it. It helps that neither of us really speaks to the older brother, and I don't consider him family. Story 19. My dad dated both my mom and my aunt. My mom had been head over heels in love with him from a very young age, though he had no idea. They'd gone on a date or two, but never became exclusive. Then my aunt showed an interest, and he dropped my mom to start dating her. My aunt knew my mom was hopelessly in love with him and went for it anyway. My mom has told me it absolutely devastated her. Eventually, he realized that my mom was the one for him. He dumped my aunt, started dating my mom, and proposed within the year. He doesn't like my aunt now, not because of their past dating history, but because he thinks she's crazy. Story 20. Well, my older brother is currently engaged to an ex-girlfriend of mine. He lied to me for years about their relationship, even though I knew they were into each other. How did I know? When we were broken up, she had cheated on me in college, but still talking. We got into a fight. During the argument, she told me she had slept with my brother. I never told him I knew, until a while later when he asked me if they could be together. I confronted him about it, and he lied to my face when I asked if they had ever been physical. Come from a very close family, and I've always considered my brothers some of my best friends. But his actions speak for themselves, and our relationship is weaker now than it was when he used to pick on me as a kid. This has caused me a lot of anxiety. I've been seeing a therapist, and I dread the day they actually get married if they go through with it. I'm embarrassed by it. My friends back home can't believe she's still involved in my family. I want to get to know my brother's fiance, but I already know so much about the type of person she is that I'll never fully trust her. I still love my brother, but I haven't looked up to him in a long time. It's sad. He gave me a half-hearted apology once, mostly because my dad forced him to. Maybe I'm just being harsh, but I refuse to celebrate their relationship because it isn't some fairy tale love story. My brother is approaching 30, and I'm sure he's feeling pressure as his friends get married. It's all crappy, but I have a life and career ahead of me, and I know I'd never do something like that to a friend, or especially not to my brother. Story 21. My mom was previously married and had kids with my uncle, my dad's cousin. She got to know the whole extended family really well since everyone lived in the same town in Mexico. That's how she met my dad. Her first marriage ended badly, and she was too poor to move back with her family in another state, so my dad's family took her and her kids in. They lived just a few houses down from her ex, so everyone saw each other often. I don't know how long she stayed with them before she and my dad started seeing each other, but eventually it happened. At first, he treated the kids like his own. They were family after all. But over time, he started resenting them. Now, he doesn't like them being brought up at all. I didn't even know they existed until I was probably 10, and that was only because I overheard my mom on the phone. The kids stayed in Mexico with their dad, my uncle. Once my dad brought my mom and us, his biological children, to the States. No one ever really understood why he suddenly flipped. They all still live in the same town, and my siblings visit my dad's family, my grandma and aunts, regularly. Nobody has a problem with it except my dad. Story 22. I'm about to marry a girl whose half-sister I originally dated. I dated both of them back in high school. In my eyes, it wasn't a long-lasting relationship. I didn't even have a car at the time, so we didn't hang out nearly enough. She was more into parties and alcohol than I was, and eventually, we agreed it wasn't going to work out. She has since estranged herself from most of her family, claiming they didn't treat her right. This means she doesn't come up in conversation very often, and even if she did, my fiancé is pretty chill about it. Probably because she knew we were too different, and the relationship never lasted long enough to form any real bond. The fact that I dated both sisters isn't exactly something she's proud to admit, but we occasionally tell people just to see their reactions, which is generally hilarious. Story 23. This happens in my family a lot. Not to me personally, but my grandma married a man and they had 2 daughters. Let's call them Auntie A and Auntie B. They got divorced and she later married my grandfather. They had 2 more daughters, my mom and Auntie C. Meanwhile, Grandma's first husband married Grandma's sister. They had a daughter who we'll call Cousin Sue. So Cousin Sue is technically my mom's cousin, But she's also the half-sister of my mom's half-sisters because cousin Sue shares the same dad as Auntie AA and Auntie B. Still with me? There will be a quiz. There was a lot of animosity between my grandma and her sister who married her ex, and also between my grandpa and the ex. At one point, my grandpa actually shot, but did not kill the ex. Hey, it's Wyoming. What can I say? But wait, and there's more. Cousin Sue grew up and married a guy. They had 3 kids. But he died. She later married his brother and had another child. So now her kids are both siblings and cousins, just like she is a sibling, her cousin, to 2 of her own half-sisters. Oh, and there's more. Auntie A married a guy who had a brother. That brother was introduced to my mom. Yes, he is my dad. That means, technically, I am my own cousin. Family gatherings are understandably uncomfortable since most of these people are divorced, yet their kids still have to interact with all the former in-laws. Story 24. Not sure if this thread is fate or what, but here's my story. My partner of 13 years and I recently split. We have 3 kids together, and she decided it was best for her to move out of our house instead of me, even though I begged her to let me go. I didn't want the kids to miss their mother, even though I've always been the more dominant force in their lives. Her older sister and I have always been great friends, and I could tell she was into me. Being honest with myself, I've always wanted her too, but I never crossed that line, even though she would tease and flirt whenever she came around. Now that I actually have the chance to pursue something, I'm torn. My ex and I still have a pretty good friendship, and I don't want to jeopardize that. On the other hand, I don't want to hide how I feel until it's too late. She's coming over next week, and all I can think about is what to say, or even if I should say anything at all. Now, I know most people would think the sister is in the wrong for flirting with me while I was with her sibling, but my ex is a lesbian and knew this the entire time. It's almost like the sister was waiting for me to figure it out, and being a simp, I didn't recognize that this was what had been holding us apart all these years. I'll update this post once I figure it all out. Story 25. I'll say that in the old days, circumstances like this weren't so uncommon. My father's mother died very young. My father was 14, and my uncle was 7. My father's father, by all accounts a good and decent man, wasn't up to the task of working full-time to support his kids while being the only parent. His deceased wife's younger sister was in her early 40s, wasn't dating, and absolutely loved her nephews. She married my grandfather, not for love, but for the benefit of my father and uncle. My father's father died a year before I was born, but the woman I came to know as my grandmother, technically my great-aunt, died when I was in my late 20s. I was very close to her. When I was older and a bit braver, I asked her about the arrangement. I asked her point blank if, even though their marriage wasn't based on traditional love, though they did grow to care for each other, it was platonic. She answered with a mischievous grin. How could it have been? That was a great, real human moment between us. Story 26. I think I can contribute an interesting story. I dated a girl all through high school and had every intention of marrying her. She eventually cheated on me with what she claimed was a cooler version of me. Thanks for my self-esteem, right? Fast forward a few years. She had a son with that guy. They dated for a short time and then broke up. Somehow, she ended up dating his brother, eventually had a child with him, and got married. So now she has 2 kids, each by blood brothers. I'm honestly not sure how the family tree works there. Side note, the guy she married is certainly the less attractive of the 2, so karma, I suppose. Story 27. My sister has been dating the brother of her ex for over a year, and it's been her most stable relationship so far. They live in an apartment right next door to the brother's old place. They seem to handle it well. While there, was a period of awkwardness, discomfort, and conflicts. Everyone is friends now and hangs out regularly, usually with more than just the 3 of them, probably because being both the third wheel and the ex at the same time would still be uncomfortable. Edit, the brothers are twins, and I, for one, can barely tell them apart. Story 28. Also, I came close but didn't quite cross the line since we never actually dated. In college, I had a close friend who apparently had a long-term crush on me. We briefly hooked up for a bit during junior year, but I wasn't into it. We stayed friends, and after I graduated, I started dating his younger brother, who is now my husband. It didn't cause any drama or even a short-term falling out. My husband had a serious conversation with his brother to make sure he was okay with it, and when we first started dating, the brother made it clear. So I know we're friends and all, but if you break up with my brother, I'm just letting you know. I'm on his team. In the end, he actually officiated our wedding, so I'd say everything worked out perfectly. Story 29. This is exactly how my mother met my father. Dad was originally dating my mother's older sister, who was a reddish blonde version of my mom. It's funny. Physically and personality-wise, they're almost identical, though my aunt looks a bit more Irish. They dated for a few months, but things didn't work out because my aunt already had 2 kids and didn't want any more. Dad was moving on, but my grandparents adored him. They deliberately set up a day where he came over to drop something off, and my mom happened to walk out to get something from the car or was going somewhere. And that's how they bumped into each other for the first time. 2 years later, I popped into the world. I'm 22 now, and there's still no awkwardness between them at all. My aunt moved on to another great guy whom she dated for 20 years. They lived together and everything, and then one day it just became, why don't we get married? Every holiday, one of these old stories inevitably comes up, and it's hilarious to hear everyone's perspective. My grandfather passed when I was 4, but it's still adorably funny hearing it from my grandmother's point of view. Story 30. My sister was dating this guy who was a complete shit show. We hated him. He would get drunk and wreck things, even got into a car accident with her in the car while driving drunk, and treated her terribly, but we couldn't talk her out of him. He had a sister who was a year or 2 older, and she would hang out with my sister and her boyfriend a lot. She was also a total handful. One day, my sister and the sister's boyfriend decided they were done with all the craziness. They broke up with the original partners and immediately ended up together. They tried to keep it quiet for a while. All their friends thought they were crazy because if the siblings found out they had been dumped just to date each other, things would have gotten completely nuclear. Knowing how crazy and emotional they both could get, I was worried they might go after my sister. Fortunately, they managed to keep it under wraps long enough to cool down from their breakups before finding out. I always thought their relationship was just a product of coping with their ex's drama and that it wouldn't last. But they've been together for 3 years now, so that's good. It's a sad ending for the siblings, though. The sister tragically overdosed and her body went undiscovered in an apartment parking lot for over a week. The brother has already been in 2 more car accidents, so I fear it might not be long before something serious happens to him as well. Story 31. I dated this guy freshman year of high school, but it never went past kissing. Later, I broke up with him and started dating someone else. About half a year later, he started dating my sister. I was weirded out, but it didn't bother me too much at the time. Their relationship was horrible. They cheated on each other constantly, but somehow got married anyway. Now, they're getting a divorce, and I never want to see him again. Bad ex-Shah stepbrother vibes all around. Reading all of these stories made me realize just how awkward the whole situation actually was. Story 32. A similar situation happened to me, but not with a sibling. I used to date this guy who was really nice, but I could never see him as more than a friend. I helped him get a job at the nursing home I worked at and noticed he had a crush on a certain CNA. I convinced her to give him a shot, and they quickly became a couple. During this time, I was dealing with terrible roommate issues, and my ex convinced his new girlfriend to let me move in with her. Long story short, we became the best of friends. We were each other's maids of honor when we got married, and our kids call each other aunt and uncle. We never found it. Weird that we had both dated the same guy and that I had set them up. It just makes for a fun story now. Story 33. I'm not married, but yes, I'm currently in a serious relationship with my ex's older sister. My current partner and I were very close friends in high school and often set each other up on dates. She set me up with her younger sister and things were going well until she cheated on me. We broke up and my current partner was completely on my side and incredibly supportive. I was shocked to learn that she had feelings for me all the way back in our second year of college. My girlfriend and I have now been going strong for 2 years. It's definitely a little weird sometimes, especially when I see my ex at events or social gatherings, but we barely talk, so it's manageable. Story 34. There doesn't seem to be as much in the way of first-person experiences, and I don't often talk about this openly, but if anyone needs personal stories or insight, you always PM me. I dated my SO's brother for nearly 5 years. Unfortunately, about 3 years into the relationship, I discovered my ex's substance abuse issues. I tried to support him through NA and AA, tried to be there, but it was slowly draining me. During this time, his brother and nephew came to stay with us while his ex-wife was going through a similar struggle during their divorce. I can't fully explain it, but having them there meant there was finally someone who truly understood what was happening, despite my efforts to hide it. By this point, I resented my ex. We were living together, but I was stuck trying to pay off my share to leave cleanly, while also covering everything to support both of us as his addiction consumed his finances. On top of that, I had to keep things balanced in case I needed to help my mom due to her life circumstances. It was just one look of understanding, and we had this unspoken connection. He knew exactly what my life was like because he'd been living it. We kept in touch, and I moved out a week later after his brother got drunk and high, was mad at me, and even urinated on me while I was sleeping. That was the moment I realized I could handle my finances independently, leave that toxic situation behind, and make things work. A while later, his brother came to visit me. He lived out of town near where I live now, and things evolved in ways neither of us anticipated. Long story short, we're both so happy. It's been 3 years, and the family has settled and fully understands. My ex went to rehab, is doing well, and is supportive of how things played out. He believes the right people are together. We were a big part of the support that got him there, and he still calls periodically to update and chat. I think he's truly happy. And we're all just good people working through the gray areas and difficulties life throws at us. There's honesty, understanding, and time moving forward. I've never been in such a positive, respectful relationship. We often forget the connection to his brother because we live so far away. When we talk about him, it's just like talking about any family member. No issues or awkwardness. We're a team, and that's all there is to it. You could dwell on the past and find faults, but we're just living, and we're so, so happy. Story 35. Late to the party, but here goes. This is exactly what my father did. He knocked up my mother when she was 19. Both sets of grandparents were deeply religious, so they forced them to marry. They had my older brother, and a few years later, they had me. Fast forward through a lot of drama and a pretty rough childhood for me and my brother, and my parents divorced. A few years later, my father married the woman he had always truly loved, my aunt. So now my aunt is my stepmom, and my dad is literally my uncle. Ever hear the expression, Bob's your uncle? Yeah, Dad's name is Bob. Yes, I'm South. Family get-togethers? Don't exist. My mother and my aunt's stepmom never spoke again, except briefly and painfully around my grandmother's funeral. Neither my brother nor I speak to our dad very much anymore. Not because we don't want to, but because he doesn't want to. When my brother had kids, he offered to fly our dad across the country to meet them. Uncle Dad declined. It's pretty clear he regrets that first chapter of his adult life. Us boys included. Story 36. My brother married my ex from high school. We only dated for about 9 months, but they got together roughly 4 months after our breakup. I had a lot of resentment toward her, but not my brother. At the time, I figured it would be a short-lived relationship. She joined the Navy shortly after they started dating, and I didn't see or talk to her during that first year. During her deployment, some Russian fighter jets reportedly flew within 5 miles of her aircraft carrier. My brother and she were still dating at that point, and I remember thinking, crap, if she dies and I've been an a-hole the whole time they've been together, that would really suck. When she returned, we got back in contact and rebuilt our relationship. Now, my brother and she are married and have a beautiful baby boy. We all live together in a big house, and it's funny. There are no weird moments between us. We just argue like a brother and sister would. Ha 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 ha. My brother, God's gift to women whose standards were low enough to attract him, managed to double dip in the same family pool. Not a marriage, but definitely some intrafamilial awkwardness. He picked up a woman at a bar during his last year of college for a one-night stand. Only when he woke up the next morning, she was still there, crying. He asked what the problem was, and she held up some clothing that belonged to his girlfriend, her sister. As any reasonable man would do, he claimed he had amnesia until she got too uncomfortable to keep yelling at him, at which point she left. He then called his girlfriend and explained that he saw her sister all over a guy who looked just like him the night before. Somehow, his girlfriend didn't break up with him over this. Story 37. My brother and I had a situation similar to this. Being twins and dating people with siblings can get weird. Back before I came out, I dated the sister of the guy I'm with now. After realizing I preferred men, funny enough, from spending time with said brother, and having a super uncomfortable conversation, I ended up dating him. It turns out my brother found his sister attractive too, so in a way, she didn't lose me at all. Family outings are funny now. At first they weren't, but after their mother got over the mix-up, things have been pretty solid. And honestly, we're all happier for it. Story 38. My grandpa married my grandma after she divorced his best friend. What's wild is that his best friend has every single family event since then. For the longest time, I thought the guy was some distant uncle or something until my mom told me the truth. After that, I started paying closer attention to him. He's very quiet and keeps to himself, but at one gathering, I overheard him say to my grandpa, "That's why I divorced her," right after my grandma had finished yelling at my grandpa about something. Story 39. My ex is technically my sister-in-law, but a slightly different version. I married her husband's sister. We actually got together at their wedding, so basically, I dated a girl, we split up, stayed friends, and then I was invited to her wedding, and ended up dating her new sister-in-law. Everyone's fine with it, and it really isn't a thing. Honestly, it's kind of nice to have a friend as family. It makes our relationship straightforward since we skipped the whole getting to know you phase that can happen with in-laws. I know it's a pretty dull answer, but that's just how life goes sometimes. Story 40. Okay, this one's a bit crazy. My mom dated my dad's oldest brother before she dated my dad. They went out on one date, but it was enough for her to realize how much of an a-hole my uncle was. My dad, however, never stopped pursuing my mom, even after she had dated his brother. A year after my mom and dad started dating, my uncle began dating my mom's sister. Now they're married and have been for nearly 30 years. Yes, my cousins and I have moms who are sisters and dads who are brothers. It's weird to outsiders, but it's awesome for us. I feel like I can rely on 2 moms and 2 dads. Story 41. A friend of mine told me about her grandmother, who had an affair with her brother-in-law about 30 years ago. Both couples found out, and naturally, both marriages ended in divorce. Not long after, the sisters married each other's ex-husbands. Somehow, they've all reconciled, and you can now find the 4 of them, having breakfast together every morning at the local coffee shop. Both couples had children before the divorces, which makes things delightfully confusing. The kids' aunts double as their stepmothers, and their uncles double as their stepfathers. Amazingly, everyone gets along famously. Story 42. I dated a guy for years whom I met through his 2 brothers that I was friends with. We had a child and moved back to my hometown because I couldn't be with him anymore. Over time, I rekindled my friendship with one of his brothers and couldn't deny the feelings that developed after so many years of friendship. It's the happiest relationship I've ever been in, but there's a lingering guilt because I feel like we've created a complicated situation for the kids involved. Still, the kids are thriving 10 times better than before. My ex, the current partner's brother, is the only one who's openly bitter about it. It's hard, but in a way, I feel like I had the perfect child with the perfectly wrong person. Story 43. I guess my family is messed up in more ways than one. My mom and dad got married and had me a year later. At the time, my dad's first cousin was 10 years old. Fast forward 7 years. My dad gets into a motorcycle accident, becomes an amputee, loses the will to live or work, doesn't pursue counseling, basically becomes a depressed drain on society. My mom leaves him and rents a room with her best friend, who happens to be dating that first cousin. Shortly afterward, the best friend and cousin split and my mom sort of swoops in. By sort of, I mean she wasn't forward about it, didn't advertise it, but she also wouldn't have lied if asked. So my mom dates my cousin for 10 years, and he basically became a father figure for me during the most important years of my life. Their relationship was strange in a lot of ways, but it was clear to anyone paying attention that they were made for each other. Here's the extra special part. He ended up getting the world's rarest cancer and died at age 29. Thanks, universe. High five. Great job. Anyway, my dad's side of the family was pretty bent out of shape about the whole situation. They don't really speak to me or my mom anymore. My dad lives in another state, so I don't see him often, and we didn't really have a relationship until my cousin died. Now we're okay, though. It's been 10 years since his death, so we've had time to hash things out. But my family is also pretty hypocritical. My uncle married someone, had a kid, then they split up. He ended up getting together with his ex-wife's cousin, and no one said a word. They welcomed her and her kids like nothing weird was happening. Oh well, family is weird. Story 44. My mother was dating my father's brother for a short time. She quickly realized my uncle was rather self-centered and decided not to pursue the relationship further. But she always told me she loved how her first name looked with his last name. Apparently uninterested in giving up the name she wanted, she just moved a few bar stools over and got chummy with the next brother, my dad, who was a year younger. No one thinks anything odd about it at all. It's been nearly 30 years, and it's just part of the family history. Story 45. I never dated my wife's sisters, but I did sleep with each of them long before my wife and I started dating. When I asked the youngest sister out, I made it clear, yes, I've been with both of your sisters, but no, I don't have any feelings for either of them. I ended up marrying the youngest, who was also the least crazy of the three, had kids, bought a house, the whole deal. At first, she gave me endless grief about having hit a trifecta, which apparently many men had tried to achieve. One of her sisters is overweight, and she loves to bring that up too. Occasionally, I'll catch her shaking her head, and when I ask, "What's wrong?" she'll say, "I can't believe you slept with my fat sister." I just laugh and say, "I drank enough alcohol that night to drown the people of Ireland." Is it weird at family functions? Not really. Only the four of us know about it, and it's not a taboo subject. They're my sisters now, and I love them as such. I have no romantic feelings for anyone but my wife, the mother of my children, whom I love with all my heart. Story 46. Not my story, but my best friend's. Her much older brother got engaged, but a month before the wedding, the fiance called it off because she had fallen in love with their father. The father admitted to the affair, left their mother, and eventually married his son's fiance. They now have 2 kids, and everyone tries to act like nothing ever happened. Story 47. I can sadly contribute to this one. My husband's ex, let's call her Jane, is married to his older brother. There's a ton of drama involved. Long story. Short, before we were together, my husband was dating Jane. She cheated on him with his brother and got pregnant by him. My husband found out, broke up with her, and she ended up marrying his brother for the sake of the child. That's just the beginning. My mother-in-law loves Jane. She comes from the right family and all that, while she openly dislikes me. So, at family gatherings, there are little digs. "Son, it's astounding you let Jane go." That sort of thing. It gets worse. Jane is very vocal about how my husband is the one that got away. Her husband, meanwhile, drinks quietly in the corner. When she's really drunk, usually at Christmas, New Year, or any party, she has been known to recount intimate memories. It's awful. She's awful. But my husband, he's a gem, and he makes every uncomfortable moment worth it. Story 48. This is the family scandal. Some backstory. In my family, it's traditional to name the eldest son John, then that John names his eldest son John, and so on. I've traced this tradition back to 1650, and it's still alive today. My great-grandma Violet had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. My grandpa is the middle child, named John. I always wondered why my grandpa's older brother didn't get the family name. My grandpa doesn't like to talk about his childhood or his family. He's actually a bit estranged from them. This past summer, while assembling the family tree, I had to call my mom to confirm a birth date. I started asking about my grandpa's brother. She said, "Well, Grandpa is the legitimate son, so he got the family name." Turns out great-grandma Violet was quite the party girl back in the day. She became pregnant after a night out with my great-grandfather's younger brother. My great-grandfather offered to marry her and raise the child because his brother wouldn't. Years later, my great-grandfather died in an accident during World War II. After the war, my great-grandma married his best friend. Story 49. Family friends. 2 biological brothers married 2 biological sisters, and each couple had kids. Both couples were extremely close. One wife passed away from cancer. A few years later, when the husband of the other couple was dying, he made his brother promise to take care of the wife he would be leaving behind. Later on, the brother and the widowed wife ended up marrying. My family became friends with them during this final marriage. They were simply adorable together. You'd never have guessed they hadn't been married for 50 years. He passed away a few years ago, and I can't imagine being the last of that close-knit fourscore. Story 50. I was just scrolling through these stories, thinking how weird some of these situations must be and feeling kind of normal. Then I remembered I might be the worst sister in the world. Back in high school about 12 years ago, my brother was dating a girl. Let's call her D. And I became friends with her. About a year into the relationship, I wasn't really paying attention. And my brother, who has a habit of over-dramatizing his problems, somehow got himself dumped. D left him and started seeing a new guy the same week. My brother is one of those people with a full resume of mental and social issues he uses to excuse himself. Bipolar, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, OCD, traumatic childhood, etc. The only thing he's actually been diagnosed with is ADD and dyslexia. Our childhood wasn't perfect, but it wasn't trauma-inducing either. Fast forward about 8 years, D is still happily with Guy 2, something my brother has never really let go of. I had just come home from time away, and I ended up partying with D and her guy. I'm a very lightweight drinker, and with heavy liquor involved, 1 drink turned into 2, and 2 drinks turned into a pretty wild 3 score. I've never told my brother that I slept with his ex and the man he's always hated, and probably never will. Story 51. I guess I can contribute to this LOL. Back when I was 12, I dated this kid who was 14. Yeah, I know. How much can a 12-year-old really date? I say dated because we never kissed. We just called each other boyfriend and girlfriend. We eventually broke up, but stayed friends and always had a soft spot for each other. We considered each other our first loves. Now, an important thing to know. My older sister is a massive attention seeker. She was an ugly kid, but as she got older, she got pretty. And now she loves proving she can get any guy she wants. And if one of her sisters likes a guy, even better. Back to the story. After we broke up, this guy went through a major hoe phase. He had been overweight as a kid, but eventually lost the weight, got a six-pack, and basically could get with any girl who was down. My sister knew how I felt about him, and she went for it. She became just another notch on his belt. She made sure to give me all the details about it because she knew it would hurt me. And of course, she dated him for 5 days just to get under my skin. About 3 years ago, he and I started talking again. At first, it was just friendly catch-ups. I didn't expect anything to come of it, and honestly, wasn't sure I even wanted to talk to him. But we bonded because I had just gotten out of an abusive relationship, and he genuinely helped me through that rough time. One thing led to another, and we ended up in a friends with benefits situation. Over time, that grew into real feelings, and now we've been happily dating for 2 years. At the beginning of my relationship, my sister was a bit of a nightmare even though she had a fiance and a newborn son. She tried to keep me away from my nephew purely to hurt me, which caused tension for a while. My boyfriend saw me crying over it and was furious at her actions. I think she saw him as some kind of backup. Now, things calmer. My boyfriend is great with my nephew, and my nephew adores him, so everyone's pretty cool about it. And honestly, why would she want him as a backup with a fiance and a newborn? My sister was going through a rough patch with her fiance at the time and actually cheated on him. While she was pregnant, she sent explicit pictures to another guy and slept with someone our younger sister had a crush on. She's always been a bit of an attention seeker. She's done a lot of messed up stuff, but that's another story. Story 52. So, a guy I went to college with was dating this girl. She fell completely, madly in love with him. And by madly, I mean she was kind of unhinged. They broke up after a year or so, but he would still hook up with her occasionally. Somehow she ended up meeting his brother. Long story short, they got married and now have a kid. Apparently, she occasionally threatens her brother-in-law's wife. For the record, most of this was told to me, secondhand, so take it with a grain of salt. Except for the crazy parts which I witnessed firsthand. Story 53. Not my story, but my aunt by marriage experienced this. She dated a guy seriously, but it didn't work out. Eventually, she started seeing my uncle. In the meantime, that same guy began dating her sister, which really upset my aunt. She was so unhappy about it that she even considered moving across the country, risking her relationship with my uncle just because of them. Despite all that drama, my aunt and uncle got engaged, and her sister got married shortly afterward, in a small ceremony that my aunt wasn't even told about. The only time I've seen my aunt in a room with her sister was at that wedding, and I don't think they really spoke. It's fine though, her sister came off as kind of a jerk, and now my aunt and uncle have a new baby cousin. Story 54. My sister ended up marrying my other sister's ex. Neither of them seems particularly upset about it. Back in high school, they were all good friends, even after the dating ended, and while the married pair never officially dated in high school, there was definitely some sort of thing there. Once they ran into each other again after college, it became clear pretty quickly that they were going to get married. The sister who had originally dated him was happily involved with someone else at the time and got married around the same period. I wasn't a huge fan of him. Older siblings' friends usually aren't the greatest, but everyone has moved on and it's all fine now. Story 55. I'm marrying my ex's twin sister, but my ex and I are best friends now. Our relationship back in high school was very light, just holding hands, going on a few dates, and spending summers lounging on a picnic blanket. It ended when she left me for another guy, and I was bitter for a while, but we both moved on. Now I'm honored to have her as my future sister-in-law, her twin sister and we're good friends throughout high school, and we fell in love in college. She and I shared all our first together, from our first kiss to our first physical experience, and we're set to get married next year. It's not the juiciest story out there, but we're all happy, and we love each other to pieces. Story 56. I was engaged to a woman several years ago, and we had been together for 3 years. Towards the end of our relationship, my brother offered to buy us gym memberships so he would have someone to work out with. I worked too much and didn't want him to waste his money, but I told him that if he wanted to buy my fiance a membership so they could work out together, that would be fine. He did, and they played racquetball and worked out together, spending a lot of time with each other. At no point did it occur to me that anything else might be happening because I wasn't an insecure or jealous person and trusted my fiance. Plus, it was my brother, right? A few months later, she ended up breaking up with me. We had been having a hard time and fought a lot. At one point, I had broken up with her, and we later got back together. She refused to give me a reason for the breakup and swore up and down that there was no one else. A month later, my brother came to me and told me they had been seeing each other, but not while she and I were together. I told him he was being stupid and reminded him that I had done some terrible things to her. And if he was really okay with that, then do whatever he wanted. He was supposed to realize it was highly inappropriate and back off. But he didn't. They've now been married for several years and have 2 kids. Everyone else acted super weird about it during their first year together, but I had moved on to another woman, so it didn't bother me anymore. Family gatherings aren't weird, and it's really no big deal. When I tell people about it, they all have the same open-mouthed surprise and can't believe it. I have since been married and divorced. I have 2 wonderful children from that marriage and 2 more with my current partner. Story 57. My son's father has been with my sister since before my son was born. They met because I had moved back to my own country and she was my go-between to contact him since I didn't have a phone at the time. It was fairly obvious what was happening, and while I was a bit upset at first, I'm fine with it now. I don't have to worry about my son being around some woman I don't know, and he loves my sister and my ex dearly. She's also very helpful with watching him, since my work hours and commute are insanely long. I know they feel awkward about people knowing, but it's not much of a concern for me. Most people are just surprised that I'm not constantly enraged 8 years later. Story 58. Well, my first cousin is married to my ex-girlfriend's older sister. Of course, we see them all the time at family gatherings. My SO hates that she's always there and tries to make small talk with me. We dated for 3 years, so there's history there. LOL. I just ignore my ex most of the time and always get told by my cousin to stop being a D-bag toward his in-laws. Now, when my SO and I go to their gatherings, we just get totally hammered and act like douchebags toward everyone. I guess it worked out great. Maybe that's why we don't get invited anymore, LOL. Story 59. Not me, but when I was younger, I dated a woman whose mother married her uncle. That is her father's brother. They got together and married several years after the divorce. Her father wasn't well liked by either side of the family, so he was never invited to or attended any family functions, neatly avoiding any potentially awkward situations. They never had children together either. Both had kids from previous relationships. So there were no simultaneous sibling cousin situations that would make the family tree look like that of an 1800s European royal family, just a couple of cousins are sibling-in-law connections. Story 60. My dad has 3 sisters. Aunt J was married to Uncle H and had 2 kids. Aunt M was married to Uncle D and also had 2 kids. Somewhere along the line, Uncle H left Aunt J, Aunt M left Uncle D, and before you knew it, Aunt M and Uncle H were married. This all happened before I was even a thought, but from what I've heard, it tore the family apart for quite some time. Aunt M and Uncle H didn't come around much, but here we are, 30-some years later, and everyone just accepts it. H and M come around often, usually at Sunday dinner, and H, M, and J are all in the room together. I don't think J ever forgave them, and the awkwardness is palpable, but I think she holds her tongue for the sake of family, her kids, and her nephews. Story 61. I can contribute to this. One of the first girls I dated was this sweet, fun-sized girl. She was loyal, would do anything for you, and was just a complete romantic. We dated for 3 weeks at first, then broke up because I didn't feel anything and didn't want to waste her time. Later, we ended up hooking up because we both had a fire in our loins. Fast forward about 3 years, and she's working for my mom. Being friends with her wasn't awkward at all. We'd talk all the time, I'd help her with her work, then head off to my girlfriend's house to get some action. A couple of months pass, and when I come home from school, I notice her and my big brother are getting along. It seemed pretty flirty, but I didn't mind. The flirting keeps going over the next few months, and then he tells me they're going on a date. I didn't feel weird about it because I had no romantic feelings for her, but I was like, that's cool, but dude, I was really all up in there. Wasn't that weird for you? I had basically taken her V-card. They went out, they were happy, and about a year later they had a $99 wedding special in the ghetto. It was a bit of a sad wedding in a way because I think she had just kind of settled. Everything felt rushed. I also found out that my brother and I were the only 2 men she had ever dated. Her family seemed super excited about it too. I tried to be cool about it, but it was hard not to feel a little weird whenever they were around. I never brought it up because I didn't want to cause drama or make my brother feel uncomfortable. Over time, I realized the past was the past, and they seemed genuinely happy together. I stopped thinking about it so much and just treated them like any other couple. Still, sometimes I catch myself laughing at the absurdity of the whole situation. Life has a strange way of looping back on itself in unexpected ways. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.